noticed that the name of your book is a psychic's life from skeptic to believer.
Well, the first book is Growing Up Psychic, and that was the skeptic to believer, and then the second one is A Psychic's Life. The Psychic's Life was just a little bit more sarcastic about psychics and the different kinds and what we do and what we don't do and what we can do and what we can't do and that kind of stuff. It was supposed to be 7 reasons why not to go to a psychic, but my publisher didn't.
Well, that interests me. What were hit the highlights for me for the reasons not to go to a psychic, coming from a psychic.
One of the things I noticed is that people get real dependent on it. They won't make decisions unless they talk to a psychic, and they don't trust their own intuition, and that things do happen. Like a lot of times when I do a reading for people, it doesn't matter whether I do a reading for them or not. Stuff is still going to happen. I'm just kind of pointing stuff out to them, and it's not like I'm going to make this huge difference. Psychics are just basically water boys, they're just there to kind of support you and help you get through stuff. And but it's been bugging me that so many psychics have been getting such a huge ego these days. So that's why the whole book thing. And one of the chapters is My Third Eye is Bigger Than Your Third Eye, and it's all about that kind of stuff.
Well, it's funny because Michael and I were just talking about this because he actually spent 2 years working with psychics and said that, yes, there was definitely people who were addicted to their psychics. And the psychics themselves had to tell them, hey, you're calling too much.
Well, you know what? That's funny because when that happens with me, it's like when I tell people that they're calling too much and that they can't talk, they want me even more. So I just lie to them. I give them bad information. I suck, so then they think, oh, this guy's no good. I have to actually suck so that they'll leave me alone.
So let's start with the basic question. What is psychic phenomena?
Well, there's all sorts of different kinds. Like, I grew up in a psychic family. I didn't, and I actually had no interest in this stuff whatsoever. I still don't wonder. I wonder if I still do, but we just had some weird stuff happen to us when I was a kid, and it made our family kind of aware that we had to do something about it and kind of investigate it, or at least my mom did, and in that process, we just kind of all. There's 4 of us kids. I'm the youngest, and 3 of us are psychics, or one of them's a medium. My other sister's a psychic. Well, she does everything. And then me. And then my mom, who passed, but she was really into it. And it wasn't, and then I have another sibling, but he's not into it at all. In fact, he's on the dark side. He just doesn't believe in it at all.
Dark side as in he needs to be brought back?
No, dark side is like a reborn Christian kind of thing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, no,
They would call that the bright side, but
right. It just depends on your.
Yes.
He's the black sheep of the family. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was 7, and it actually started with this guy, with my family member. He was 14. I'm 7. We're all 3 years apart, basically. And we grew up in this. Upper middle class neighborhood. My dad was a salesman, kind of a guy, and big guy, huge ex-boxer, just that kind of guy, and really in control kind of a guy. Liked his wife to stay at home with the kids and all that kind of thing. And it was we were sitting around eating dinner, and my brother, who's the guy that's not into it anymore, was downstairs playing the drums, or learning how to play the drums. He really sucked, it sounded terrible. And but he was learning, and he was one of those cool kind of teenagers, kind of guys. The women loved him. He was a gifted artist, athlete, football player, all that kind of stuff. But he was like a serious drummer, very serious kind of guy. And he was down there tinkering, and then all of a sudden, it sounded kind of good, It sounded like he put on one of those records, How to Play the Drums by kind of thing, because it sounded tight. And that lasted for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then all of a sudden we hear the drums being knocked over, the cymbals falling over, and the door blasted open, and he came flying upstairs. And you have to understand, in my family, like males weren't it wasn't encouraged to show fear or weakness, especially with my dad. It just wasn't, and especially with my older brother, because he was the first son, this was the first time I ever saw my brother scared. He was scared to death, and he didn't want to talk about it. And my dad was like, "What the hell's going on down there? What were you doing? What's that?" And he didn't want to talk about it. Finally, my mom got him to say what was going on. And he said that he was down there playing the drums, and this guy comes through the window, and parks himself right in front of the drums. And it scared him to death. He didn't know what to do. He just kind of put his head down and started playing, and that's when he sounded really good, because the adrenaline was going and blah, blah, blah. And he looked up a couple times, and this guy's just staring at him, and he's like freaking out. And finally he says to this person, "Please go." And this, whatever it was, just kind of went, "Oh, okay," and went through the wall. And that's when he came flying upstairs. And when he told us this, even as a kid, I thought, yeah, right. But there was something weird in the air. There was something weird, just something weird. And none of us believed him or anything. At least I didn't believe him, because none of us believed in that kind of stuff. And and we just kind of let it go. My dad made him go downstairs and pick up the drums, but he wouldn't go downstairs without anybody. It was just a weird thing. And
what did your mom say about it?
My mom was the one that was real nervous. My mom was, the opposite of my dad, real nurturing, loving, all that kind of stuff. She was like concerned. My mother grew up Catholic, so this kind of stuff was kind of creepy for her. She didn't really, she didn't want to go there. But
she was a psychic too, correct?
She was a psychic, but this is before any of that stuff. We developed any of that stuff.
I see.
Okay, so a week later, we were sitting around eating dinner again with all of us, because he wouldn't go downstairs without like a priest. And we had one of those lazy Susan things, and a salt shaker. We were all sitting and talking. And the salt shaker gets up and moves across the table. And it's the weirdest thing to see that, because it's not like there's organ music playing in the background. It's not like it's just weird to see that. You think, oh, how's that happening? You don't really put it in a place like a ghost is doing it. And it moved across the table and dropped between my mom and my dad. And we all stopped talking. We're all looking at that. My father automatically assumed, and I kind of did too, that my brother had hooked up some sort of pulley system, because we had been giving him so much crap about, hey, why don't you invite your ghost friend over for dinner and blah, blah, blah. But he was like, see, I'm telling you, there's something in this house. There's something in this house. And again, there was that weird feeling in the air, like there's something weird. More stuff started happening. You'd walk into the kitchen and you'd open up a cupboard and the stuff would slide out in your hand. And you'd think, well, that's kind of odd. But you wouldn't, attribute it to ghosts or anything like that. Lights were going on and off. You could say, well, maybe the fuse is being screwy. Somebody would come up behind you. You turn around, nobody was there. It happened during the day. It happened at night. It happened with people. It happened with not people. And it was just getting weird in the house. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, like I said. And so she was home most of the time. And she started getting freaked out because, stuff was happening. And we would tell her, hey, Mom, who turned on the water in the kitchen? And it'd just be on. Finally, she decided to go to her priest, or not priest, but our minister. We went to a Baptist church then. And he suggested it might have been something like something she had to go to the doctor for, like, a gynecologist kind of a guy. Maybe he was something about that. So she goes to this gynecologist, and he says, no, it sounds like you got some mental issues. So she goes to a psychiatrist, and she went to all these different people, and they all just kind of suggested different things, from schizophrenia to just midlife stuff, whatever. And
but you guys were experiencing the same things that she was experiencing.
Yeah, and like I said, sometimes it happened to two of us, and sometimes individual. It didn't matter what time or day or night. And
so in your mind, she wasn't experiencing some mental problems because you were seeing the same thing.
Yeah, we were all seeing it. And finally, she goes to this. She got this lady who basically worked out of her van. this counselor, this psychologist named Mrs. Roop, and she went to her, and she was a lot more open about things, obviously, and she told my mom that, it sounded like we were having paranormal activity in our house, and that she should probably talk to a medium. And my mom, like I said, she was raised Catholic, so she wasn't really okay with all that stuff yet, but Mrs. Roop made her feel a lot better. She gave my mom this lady's name was Mrs. Olson, and she lived in St. Paul. We live in Minneapolis. She lived in St. Paul, and she gave her a number, and she said, "Look, if it gets too weird, just call her up." And my mom said, "Okay, great." And they talked about a lot of stuff. She felt a lot better. So she came home, and I don't think her plan was really to talk to Mrs. Olson because, like I said, she just didn't want to really go there. It was kind of like the devil's work to her, or like that's what she was taught. But when she came home, my mom used to collect Bibles, which I didn't know about till that day. But when she came home, her Bibles were stacked up on her bed when she went upstairs to change or whatever, and it freaked her out. And because nobody was home, we were all at school, and I remember when I came home from school yelling at me for playing with her Bibles. And like I said, I didn't even know that they were there, but she was like really mad. So I didn't want to, argue with her. I just said, "Oh, okay." She put the Bibles away. We all came home from school. She made dinner. She went upstairs again to get something, and she screamed. And we all went upstairs, and there were the Bibles stacked up on this bed, and kind of in a weird way. And I think because that happened, because the whole religious thing, that's what kind of turned my mom into saying, "Okay, screw it, I got to do something." And she called Mrs. Olson, and Mrs. Olson explained all the stuff that was happening and why it was happening. And her thought was that we were going to develop our psychic stuff as a family, and that we were supposed to help each other with it. And my sister Echo was my sister Echo was the oldest, and that she was going to develop this healing stuff. And she asked my mother and my sister Echo to come in to meet her, and they did. And it all started from there. From that meeting, that started before that, but that's when my mom started getting answers. And the weird thing about it was my mom started like really feeling empowered by the whole stuff. She really got into it, and she started wanting to know about why these things were happening, why you could feel somebody's hand. She wanted to know all this stuff, and it was kind of, I think, her way. It bothered my dad a lot, so I think it was her way to kind of bug my dad, at least at first. But she really got into it, and so she started to look for other people that were having experiences. There was people that back then, like if you had psychic ability, it was considered mental illness, so everybody was kind of underground. Like right now, you can't spit without hitting a psychic, but back then, you really had to look. And
what's the connection between psychic ability and these paranormal experiences?
Well, I think from what I understand, the whole point of that was so that we would learn how to develop it, because it's kind of like something you have to develop. You have to work on it, exercises. Like there's different exercises that you can use to do to become, more psychic, to learn what your talent is. Like not every psychic is the same. Like some psychics are about past lives. Some people are, they find dead bodies. Some people find your stuff. Some people, I'm a future kind of a guy. Some people talk to your dead relatives and friends. They all just have kind of specific things, Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what the whole psychic phenomena thing was about, to kind of push, or at least for her, to push her into learning more about it.
And what do you think was going on at the house?
I thought it was Satan's playground, actually, but
looking back at it now,
I think it was. We're all into it, so I think it was exactly what Mrs. Olson said, that we were all going to develop our psychic stuff, and that we were going to go off on that level. My sister Echo's written a dozen books, and we do a lot of speaking, and we do, it's my life. I've been doing it for over 40 years. And I do a lot of ghost bustings, a lot of possession stuff, a lot of, it's kind of what I do. And so maybe that's what it was all about. I didn't want to do it though.
But you would say that it was some type of paranormal activity going on at the house.
Absolutely.
And
in fact,
sorry,
I went back there because when my mother passed, there was this agreement that the day before she passed, we said, hey, look, if we start missing each other, I'll meet you at the old house. And so occasionally I would go to the old house after she passed because I missed her. And at one point, I realized that they were putting it up for sale. So I went in and asked them about it, and I was thinking about buying the house. And I went through it with some people, and there was just a ton of ghosts there. And nobody could stay in the house. They could stay there for maybe 4 years, and that was probably the longest anybody stayed in there. But the ghosts were just, chasing these people out. And so I know that there's still stuff there. When we left in a hurry because we kind of had to. But I think for us, it was all about getting our attention. It was all about us learning how to deal with it.
So you guys experienced it, and I guess your view would be anybody who would be in that house would experience this paranormal activity. In other words, you don't need to have special psychic abilities to experience the paranormal.
No, my friends would come home from school with me, and they'd see these things themselves, or it wasn't, a lot of times they didn't want to come back, but it wasn't, as things started picking up, as we were, after a while, my mother went to this little church that was in this basement of this place, and it was a bunch of old psychics, or not old, but people that were trying to figure out what was going on. Either they're crazy or what. And then they started coming to our house because it had heat, and they liked it. And so I grew up with a bunch of psychics always at the house, and they were always practicing stuff. They didn't know what they were doing, and so they were practicing. They were practicing all sorts of stuff. They were learning. We were just learning how to do all this stuff, and so that brought in a lot more activity, ghost-wise in the house. So it wasn't unusual for my friends or whoever to see a ghost sitting in a chair. They would kind of freak out a little bit, but it was kind of known that was just kind of happening at our house.
So your brother, who ended up not being psychic and instead became a born-again Christian, he experienced all this also. So what's his explanation for it?
It freaked him out. He didn't. It scared him.
Did it end up playing a part in him becoming a born-again Christian?
In a way, I think, yeah, because we all, as one way to deal with this stuff, for me, we all got into drugs and alcohol. We all got into drugs and alcohol. And
all four kids?
Yeah, every one of us has been through treatment or some sort of sobriety kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been sober for 30-something years. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I read that. So it was mostly in your teenage years that you had your problems.
I went right into it, and I didn't stop until I kind of had to. I had my choice of jail or treatment, so that's...
And since we've covered AA and the 12-step program, I have to ask you, what was what helped you become sober? What method did you use?
I went to 2 treatment centers, but the thing that helped me really was AA, and my peers were starting to show up in meetings, and that's what really helped. I was the youngest guy in Minnesota to go through treatment.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
How old were you?
I was 14.
So you were 14 years old and sitting in AA meetings?
Yeah.
They don't have kids. They don't have kids AA.
They didn't back then. I think the youngest guy was probably 27.
Oh, wow.
So it was awkward. It was awkward. But then, it started to, after a couple of years, some people my age were starting to show up, and they were coming in, and that's when it really helped. It was hard. It was really hard for a couple of years because I didn't have anybody to relate to it. They were all, so much older.
Uh-huh. And but you worked the 12 steps.
I did.
And then what about how long did you continue going to AA?
You know what? I went for a long time. I went. more and more kids my age were coming up, and it got to be a huge thing. So I was in AA for a good almost 20 years, I think.
Wow. Based on a year or two, how many years would you say you were addicted as a teenager?
I started pretty young. I started really young. Both my parents were alcoholic, and they were in recovery. And so I was born with fetal alcohol syndrome. My mother was drunk when I was born. So
Wow.
when I started drinking, it was like going back to the womb. It was like hello. And the first drink I took, I didn't stop. I drank every day. So it was only a few years. It was probably, I started 11-ish. Yeah, it was daily, and it got to be worse and worse to where I just,
So what is your, just to finish up on AA, what is your assessment of AA? Because we've actually been fairly critical of it in our analysis because it has a very low success rate. Yes, for people who work the steps, it works, but the problem is 95% of the people don't work the steps, so it's just not effective for them.
Yeah, you got to, you really got to be ready. I was at the point where I didn't really have a choice. The last time I got drunk, the last time I used anything, I would take whatever I could to just alter my mood. And I got out of treatment, the first thing I did was I found a bottle of tequila that I hid, a long time ago, and I drank the whole bottle. And I didn't feel any better, and it freaked me out. It's like, it just freaked me out, and it was like, I got to do something. And so I was in a place where I was afraid to drink, and I was afraid to stay sober. So I kind of had to, I was ready, I was ready. I was ready to listen to these people. I just kept going, it wasn't like I was really into it. I agree. In fact, I have issues with AA myself. I went back there to get my PIN last year. And one of the people that saw me said, "Oh, you have so many years. You should speak." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd love to speak." And then the administrator came up and said, "Well, what's your AA group and who's your sponsor?" And I said, "Geez, my sponsors are all dead, and I haven't been in an AA group for a long time." And they said, "Well, you can't talk for us." And I thought, what the hell's wrong with you guys?
Here you're going to speak very glowingly of it because from your view, it saved you, and you've been sober ever since. But because you haven't been going to your meetings, you don't get to speak, right?
Right. And so I just thought, it was political crap, and I just didn't, it was disappointing.
That's the cultish kind of religious element of it, right? It's like, hey, you're not going to mass every Sunday, so you can't take communion. Right.
And it wasn't, I don't think it was built based, it was supposed to be like that, and at least in my way of thinking, it wasn't supposed to be like that. So it bothered me a little bit. I thought, it made me look at it in a different way.
So what are your religious beliefs today?
I think religion is terrible. I think it's, I think religion is evil. I believe in God. I'm a very spiritual person, but I'm not a religious person. I don't like what man has done to it. I'm not a big fan.
Mm-hmm. Being used for money and power, et cetera, just general corruption. Is that your thought?
That's my thinking. Yeah, I think you can tell when somebody has that spirit inside of them, and then you can tell the person that's just a con. And I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of religion.
Okay, so what is your personal belief then about God, et cetera?
Well, I believe it's not even a belief. I just know. I just know that there's this force. To be simplistic about it, I think that there's a negative force and I think there's a positive force, and I think that people can tap into either one if they want. And I think a lot of times people are more attracted to the dark just because it's easier and it's for a bunch of reasons. But I think it's a little bit more difficult to tap into the lighter stuff, which is the whole faith and trust and all that kind of stuff. In my line of work, I'm a future kind of a guy. I see opportunities coming up for people all the time. you can see them. It's like really clear. You can see different relationships, different jobs, different opportunities. But I think most of the time people won't take those opportunities for a whole bunch of reasons. They think that they don't deserve it, or no, it'll never happen, or, I'll make a fool out of myself if I try, and all that kind of stuff. And the people that do it tend to be a little bit narcissistic in the sense that they have to have, if they see an opportunity, they got to take it. They got to. And to me, it's about that. It's about trusting that you're here to do better things and trusting that you can get opportunities and blah, blah, blah. So God, to me, is possibility and hope and all that it's actually real. It's a choice. And for that reason, that's why I do mostly actors, like in the entertainment field, not because they're great people, but just because I know that if they see an opportunity, they're going to take it because they have to. If I do people around here, I know the best they're probably going to do is join a bowling league. Not because they're not good people. It's just that they just don't believe in themselves. They don't see it. And they're so restricted by their dark thoughts.
And what happens in your view when you die?
That's a good question. I deal with a lot of dead people, so because I see them all the time, people, they show up all the time. So I see them a lot, but I've never been to the other side. I know that there's another life after. They're going someplace. I just, I'm kind of curious about that myself. I don't believe that you just kind of die and then you just go to the ground. I do believe, because I've seen, I can't even tell you how many people I've seen, and other people have seen, the spirits of different people when they're leaving or when they're, it's like another life. It's like, it's just a transition. So in my little head, I think it's just a transition. I think that death is just a transition thing.
So when you say you've seen them, what do you see?
Like them, like their bodies, their faces, there's pictures. God, yeah, like sometimes if you're, oh boy, how do I explain? Them. I for some reason, because of what I do, people ask me to be there when they're going to die or when they're going to pass, which is kind of an interesting experience because you think it's kind of creepy, but it's actually really interesting. It's like you can see their soul just kind of leave, and there's a lightness with that. You can see it. And so I see it in that. I've seen it in friends that have passed. They'll just show up, probably because of what I do. But okay, so I'm married, and I'm not the kind of guy that's really good with kids. In fact, you would think I would be the last guy to be a good parent. And when my wife was pregnant with my first kid, with our first kid, I was scared to death. I mean, anxiety city the whole time. And my mother-in-law thought I was the Antichrist because when I was a kid, I was, doing all these different psychic stuff, and I was on these magazines. And one magazine, I was holding this crystal ball, and I was, just being a joke. And but her son-in-law pointed out and said, "This is who Katie is gonna marry, or who she's with." And she was a reborn Christian, and so she thought, "Oh no, you can't be with my daughter." In fact, when I asked her for her hand, she said no, over my dead body. So she died, which is good, but so
it was over her dead body, huh?
It was over her dead body. But so I'm freaking out, and I'm talking to my friend on the phone, and I turn around, and her name was Jeannie. My wife's mother's name was Jeannie, and Jeannie was standing right there. I mean, right there. And not only did I marry her daughter, but I impregnated her. So I thought she was there to just possess me or rip my eyes out or something like that. And my buddy was on the other line, and she started telling me about my baby, that it was going to be a girl, that, all this stuff about her, and that I was going to be a good dad and to calm down. And my friend Rob could hear Jeannie on the other line. He could hear. Sorry. it was freaking him out, but it freaked me out even more because she didn't look happy to begin with. She didn't look happy, but it was one of those things where he could actually hear her saying stuff to me. And so it's not just me that sees stuff, it's other people too that can see and hear it, especially if they're strong. If like I said, I do a lot of ghost busting, and I bring a lot of people with me, especially skeptics. It's funny when a person who is a real skeptic about ghosts, they think, yeah, right, whatever. And then when they see one, it freaks them out. They can't believe it. But by the next day, they're like, did I really see that? I don't know if I saw it. And a week later, like, I didn't see anything. That was just, whatever, fog gas or whatever. But at the time, they know they saw something. And it was the same way with us growing up, but we just kept seeing them over and over and over again. And so we just, we just gave up. We just like, okay, there's ghosts. Okay, now what do we do? What next? What's the answer next?
So you're saying you're 1,000% sure that they exist, but you don't know what they are.
I know that. Well, they're the souls of the people that were here. I know. I get when people are skeptical about stuff. I do. I have a problem with people that are so closed-minded that they're, for whatever reason, they're afraid or whatever. They just won't accept. They can't even think maybe for a second. But there's so much. I like to
call myself, I decided today, an open-minded skeptic.
Which all you need. Yeah. Really, because that's the same. That basically that's me too. I don't really believe stuff until I see it. Like a lot of the woo-woo stuff in the psychic community. My sister's way into the more kumbaya jazz than I am. I'm more of a realist when it comes to psychic stuff. When I see it, I believe it. And
so you would say for skeptics of paranormal, really the only way to convince such a skeptic is to take them along with you and have them see it for themselves.
Or not be such an idiot, because there's so much stuff out there these days. There's so many different, what was it? It's like 35 million people believe in ghosts or have seen some sort of ghosts, or, even a 0.5% of that, there's got to be something to it. There's just, I get people, I get skeptics, I do, but I don't understand people that are just completely shut off. I think they're just.
And so you're saying sometimes you intentionally take a skeptic with you?
Absolutely. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I bring and it's kind of mean, especially if the ghost is like, I've done a lot of them. And some of them are worse than others. Some of them, most of them are really stupid. You see a little bump in the night or lights go on and off. It's just stupid. But some of them, you can see the things are flying around. They're pulling on your hair. They're, tapping you. They're throwing stuff at you. And those are the ones that you want to bring people that are a little skeptical because they can see it.
Now, will an iPhone pick this up?
Sure.
And do you usually record these things?
I teach ghost busting classes too. Mostly just because a lot of people get in there and screw it up. And so when you screw up a ghost busting, it makes it worse. So I usually do jobs that are pretty bad, just because.
Well, what are you? Sorry, let me be clear. What are you exactly hired to do?
Okay, so somebody has a house that they claim that they have spirits in the house. They claim that there's things going on, like when I was growing up, like when I was a kid. Things moving around, things, lights, this and that, people being touched, all that kind of stuff. And I just go in and find out if that's true, and I go in and get rid of them. How
do you get rid of them? Do you have one of those big machines like Bill Murray, or
a vacuum cleaner? Yeah. It's really finding out. So there's 3 things to a ghost busting. First of all, you have to listen to the story of the person that's there, which sucks because I hate the story. It's boring to me. I've heard it 1,000 times. So I usually bring somebody with me that'll sit and listen to the story, which is when the person tells you all the stuff that's been going on. And you're supposed to look like amazed. But when you've seen it 1,000 times, it's difficult for me. So You listen to the story. Then you go through the house and you look to see if there's anything there. And if you can clearly see it, like, visually, then you want to find out how strong these things are, the souls or the ghosts, or whether they have a dark tinge to them, whether they have a light tinge to them. You just want to get a general idea of what they look like and how strong they are. And then you come up with a little plan about how to get rid of them. Where's the strongest spot, like in the house? Which is the worst place? Like some places just have a worse place. And you start from that, and then you work your way out. And what you do is if there's a ghost there, like, sometimes people don't even know that they're dead. We walked into a ghost busting, and this lady was laying on her bed, and she had this green glow, and she smelled, she smelled like formaldehyde. And you walked in.
You're talking about a ghost.
A ghost. Yeah.
A ghost is lying on the bed, but it had a smell to it.
Yeah, and the owner who called us. This was when my sister and I used to work together. We used to work together a lot, but they called us because they couldn't sell the house, and they didn't really believe in ghosts. They had never seen one. But they had heard about us, and they said, okay, would you come out? And so we did. And this place had a ton of ghosts, just a ton of ghosts. But so we told the owner to come in and see for herself, this lady. And so the lady comes in, sees this lady laying on the bed. The lady on the bed turns over and goes, what do you want? And the owner just passed right out, which was a bad thing for us to do. But they were just like, so-called ghosts are in this house. So if you could so-called get rid of them. So we had to show her what the deal was, why, what we were going to do. And, but she had never seen one before, let alone heard one speak or smelled one. And the smell was pretty bad on that case. But a lot of times.
And what did you do then to get rid of that ghost?
Well, you had a conversation with them. You say, hey, lady, you're dead. You got to go. And there's this, I know it's like a cliche, like the light thing, but honest to God, there's like this other side, and they have to go. Like ghosts don't belong here. They're dead. They're people that are dead, and their life is over. It's done. Whether it's good or bad, they have to go. And they don't have any rights to be here. And so you help escort them to the other side. Either you talk them to go, or you bring in other people from the other side to help them cross over.
And this usually works?
Yeah.
You don't have to go back a second time?
Well, it's funny. The ones that you have to go back are the ones that the people have established a relationship with their ghosts. Like they call them their pets, or they think they're like a nanny, And those are the ones that you have to go back to, because the people that are living in the house kind of miss them, kind of wonder what they're doing, and they kind of just say, come on back. And so those are the ones that are a pain in the butt. But
are there good ghosts and bad ghosts?
Yeah, they're not. It's not. They're just like they're people. They're like they're people. There's jerks and there's nice people. And I think when you're dead, though, you have a different perspective on things. You can see things in a different way. And we get a lot of people that have died from drug overdoses or murder, or all that kind of stuff. They call them earthbound spirits, and they're afraid to go to the other side, usually for a whole variety of different reasons. They might feel guilty, they might be afraid what's on the other side. They there's all sorts of different reasons. So they kind of stay earthbound, and those are the ones that do the Ouija boards and that move stuff and just kind of screw with you, because they get bored. They don't know what to do. They're bored, so they screw around with people. And they're not that.
Do you video any of these?
Sure.
Ghost busting activities?
Yeah.
And do the ghosts show up on the video?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's tough. It depends on the film, but yeah.
So an iPhone, they'll show if an iPhone records it.
Yeah. God, I wish I could send you some stuff there. You can. Yeah. There's especially now with everybody with a camera.
Right.
There's
Well, I'm thinking for the skeptics among us, not necessarily me included, of course, but for those listening, I'm sure seeing some video of this would be helpful. Can we share some video with the listeners?
I don't have. Let's see. I wonder if I have. I wonder if I have a picture. A buddy of mine's a cop, and there was a car accident, and this guy had wrapped himself around a pole, and he died. And so my buddy was there to take pictures, for the accident and show what happened, what didn't happen, blah blah blah. And I'll see if I can find it. And in the picture, you can see the guy's face, the guy that they just took away, and which happens all the time.
Well, you don't necessarily need to find it now. You can send me something, and we'll post it on our website.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of pictures, though. I mean, there's all sorts of different stuff. But yeah, it's.
They do show up, though. They show up on film.
They do show up. And they show up on film. You can see them. You can ask to see them. If people are like skeptical, they can certainly ask to see them. The problem with that, though, is that they get, they'll probably get some jerk spirits, and they'll just kind of play with you. But yeah, I mean, if you need proof, you can certainly you can ask for it.
And what about animals? Do they have souls? Do they show up as ghosts?
Yeah, it's funny with animals. They really. There's a lot of pictures of animals, dogs, cats, waiting for being by their owner, waiting for them.
So you would say the answer is yes, that animals have souls just like humans.
I would say that's true. Yeah, just because I've seen pictures of them, and my dog and cat die. I see them all the time around here. But yeah, I see them all the time. In fact, I think I'm tripping on them sometimes. But yeah,
but when you're called out to do ghost busting, it never involves an animal.
Yeah, sometimes
it does.
Yeah, because the dogs will bark. People are really skittish about this kind of stuff. So if they hear their old dog barking, they get a little freaked out. Or if their toys are moved, the dog's toys or cat's toys are moved. A lot of times the owners keep their toys, and they'll be, wake up and they'll be all over the living room, stuff like that. That happens.
Okay, so you say that you are a psychic that focuses on the future.
I'm a future guy, yeah.
A future guy. So tell me what that means. That means that you can predict the future?
Well, no. Well, yeah. I mean, that sounds kind of grandiose, but I just see opportunities coming up. When I started doing this stuff, I didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be one of those guys that was going to be in a restaurant when I was 85 years old giving card readings. I didn't want to do that. So I thought, if I was going to do this, what would I want to do, and what interests me, and how can I prove whether I'm accurate or not? And that's how I decided to do the future stuff. And what it is, and sometimes I suck. I'm not saying that I don't, but sometimes I can get really lucky about like different people coming in. It's like you can see a person coming in their life, or you can see this new job, or I started doing people that right before they were successful, you could see that things were just going to wide open for them. And that's interesting to me because, like I said, I can tell whether I'm accurate or not. But it's also whether I think the person's going to do it. Like, say you're kind of lonely and you haven't been with somebody, and you see somebody coming along. I think that there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be involved with that person. But you could decide that you didn't want to. You could just decide, nah, I'm just going to pass. But I see the opportunities coming. Where I screw up and where I get wrong sometimes is that I predict something that the person I think is going to do, but they don't do. But the opportunity's still there. They just don't necessarily take it. So but sometimes, I've been lucky for a while, and hopefully I'll continue to be. But it's really just whether I think that they're going to take the opportunities that are coming, because there's always opportunities.
So
it's just,
how would you describe that ability to see these future opportunities?
Oh boy,
What
I don't know.
what is that? What is that ability?
Um,
Because a couple thoughts I have is is they have people talk about intuition. They
yeah.
talk you have just intelligence of being able to be a smart person and read situations. So how would you describe this ability and how unique it is to you versus anyone else?
Well, it's unique. I mean, I think there's other psychics that do future jazz. It's just unique to me because that's what I'm interested in. I mean, when I do readings for people, I have to tell them where they've been and where they're going. I mean, what they're doing right now. I mean, you can't just say, yeah, you're going to get a job in 3 weeks. That'll be $300. You have to, you have to tell them stuff about what they've been through and stuff. I don't know. I don't want to say prophecy because that sounds just awful, but I just, honestly, I just call myself a future guy. It's not something that, like, most of the time, the person that I'm talking to doesn't usually believe me. They usually just think I'm full of crap until the stuff happens. And then they'll call me back or they'll text me and say, okay, so-and-so happened, blah, blah, blah. But it's not something that is based on intelligence. It's just, it's hard to explain, but you can see these things coming up. It's like if you rolled ahead, like when you do it on newspaper stuff, when you roll ahead, you can just see that. You can see the stuff happening. I can.
And how do you think that's possible? Is there any any explanation for it? Is there any scientific explanation for it?
Probably no. Probably scientific, not no. How can I explain it? Okay, so intuition. You get a feeling you should go here. You get a feeling that you should go there. Athletes use intuition all the time in their moves and what they do, and they get the sense that they should do it. But they don't look at it as an intuition. They just say it's instinct. It's kind of like that, except on steroids. It's like you get a bigger, broader picture on it. It's to me, it's going to sound nutty, but I get pictures on stuff. They start talking to me about stuff. They meaning like there's this theory that everybody has like spirit guides around them, and so I try and tap into those people. They start explaining stuff to me. I explain to the people who these people are, and it's that kind of stuff. It sounds a little nutty, but it's true. It's, at least it is true for me. For what I see and what I do. Mm-hmm. It's hard for people that haven't been in it because it's they just haven't been in it. But when you get into it, when you start having these experiences, when you see all this stuff, after a while, it just becomes sort of normal.
And when you see dark or negative things in the person's future, are you able to warn them against something bad about to happen?
I did so people are always doing these little sizzle shows, about myself or my family. And they're always trying to do us so that we're like the medium, that psychic lady that comes up and ambushes you with, like, I see your dead relative and he's telling you to look behind the mirror for money and all that stuff. That's sensational crap, and I don't believe in that. I don't think you're supposed to do that, but whatever. The producers are always looking for stuff like that. And there was a crew at my house, and they wanted me to do stuff like that, make the person cry. They wanted me to, the person that was coming in for a reading, they wanted me to just, make them cry like that psychic does. And I think that's stupid. I do. So we got in a fight about it. Finally, it was like, look, you either make this person cry or leave. And I said, well, go. And they said, well, no, we're not going to go, but just please try to make it better. So there was some tenseness. They brought in this guy who's a real big skeptic, didn't believe in this stuff at all. And he sits down and he doesn't say anything. He just sits there, and I go, well, what do you want to know? And he goes, just tell me whatever. So I'm pissed. And the cameras are rolling, and I say, okay, And they start showing up. These little guys start showing up. And they tell me he's going to die in 2 weeks. Maybe he won't die, but he's probably going to die in 2 weeks. Something's going to happen with his lungs, and he's going to die in 2 weeks. So if he's going to die in 2 weeks, what would he say to the people that were going to die? And this guy's freaking out. He goes, well, what do you mean I'm going to die in 2 weeks? I said, you're going to die in 2 weeks. You might
this
not.
Was, sorry, this was part of a show?
Yeah.
A television show?
It was what do you call it? Sizzle. They were shooting a sizzle, because they wanted to do a show. Like a pilot. Like a pilot.
Pilot episode. Okay. So this is all on film. Can we see this somewhere, by the way?
They have, I don't know. They show, well, I'll tell you in a sec.
Okay.
And he starts talking about all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, the guy dies. And they were afraid to use it because it was so freaky. But the funny thing about it was they used it at the guy's funeral. They showed it at his funeral because it was like he was giving his own eulogy. He was like, well, I would have said this to my mom, or I would have said this to my sister, blah, blah, blah. And so it was really interesting because it actually worked out. But and he was a good guy. But so, yeah, sometimes the answer to your question is yes. Sometimes you do give people bad news. I wonder what happened to that footage. They presented it to TLC, and I think TLC got freaked out because it had to do with death. And
what did he die of?
He had something like a blood clot in his lungs.
You had nothing to do with it.
I sneaked into. Yeah, it's gonna be good for the ratings, pal.
How old was the guy?
Probably 50-ish.
Wow.
Yeah.
So appeared to be in perfectly good health when you were with him.
Good health. He probably had health issues before that, but.
So we're gonna probably run this episode in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So what can you predict for us that is going to happen over these 2 weeks, so that by the time this thing airs, we'll be able to demonstrate to our audience that this shit is real? Take your time. Take your time. I know I didn't preview that at all to you, but
predict what though? What area? What would you like to know?
I don't know. Is it best? I mean, is it best to have it be something pertaining to me because we've been having this conversation, or?
Jeez. Okay.
Pressure's on. Pressure's on.
Yeah.
Or yeah, Michael's saying something regarding Trump. Or there is a Game 6 of the NBA playoffs coming up, and I'll be in Vegas. I would love to know who's going to win that game.
I suck at sports, and I really would. I wish I wasn't.
Oh gosh, you could make some serious money, right?
No kidding.
That would be a strike for skeptics right there, because say, well, gee, if psychic ability is there and the ability to predict the future, then there would be some psychics making a ton of money in Vegas right now.
But the funny thing about it is it's not supposed to. The psychic stuff isn't supposed to be about money. Like I work with people that, business people, and I can't in stocks and bonds and up and down. And I can tell them what to do, and I can teach them how to trust their own intuition. But I can't make any money off of it. I can't profit from that kind of stuff. Not in that way. Mm-hmm. People say, why don't psychics win the lottery and all that stuff? Well. I think the people that win the lottery kind of have that psychic stuff to them. They have an intuition about something. They have a feeling about something. They're not just, I suppose there's some random things, but they generally do have a sense of what numbers to do. So I'm just saying, skeptics, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let's see what Michael is suggesting here. Emails on or email. Yeah, well, yeah, just to be clear, when we talked about doing this interview, we specifically said it wasn't going to be a reading. I wanted to talk to you about psychic behavior. So that's why if you're not comfortable coming up with something now,
it's a dot. I'm trying to figure out what angle to come at you with. Let's see, even about you. Jeez. I don't even know what to tell you. What to tell you about?
How am I going to do in Vegas? Should I get? Well, if you answer the question, should I or should I not gamble in Vegas? If you say,
well, you should go
if-
stick with the red. Stick with red.
stick with red.
Yeah, stick with red.
Okay, should we go with that? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. When I'm in Vegas,
Yeah.
I'm going to play red, say 10 straight times, and see how I do. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
All right, awesome. Okay, hey, Michael, thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Awesome interview. Really fun. Let's connect next time you're in LA.
Yeah.
And you're going to be hearing from me about red.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Thanks so much.
I'll see you later.
All right,
Bye.